Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and it's a very great pleasure to return to a subject in which I was closely involved during the passage of what became the Antisocial Behaviour Scotland Act, etc. 2004. At stage 3, when I opened the debate for the opposition, I stated that there was a real problem and a real casus belli underlying the Scottish Executive's determination to pass the bill. But I also said there were continuing disagreements about whether the remedies that the bill proposes are proportionate and appropriate. Now, one area where the then Minister, Margaret Curran, and I agreed, and I always agree to recognise the wisdom of somebody who accepts an amendment from me, was that research and reporting post hoc would be important to inform future generations of legislators as to whether certain provisions about which we disagreed were or were not effective in practice. Some self-evidently have contributed much less than the Labour Party suggested they would in debate in 2004, and let me lighten Nigel Donn's darkness. Robert Brown answered to me in March 2007 that there had been no parenting orders. John Lamont asked 2 questions in spring and autumn 2008 and received once again the same answer. Mr Kelly.
James Kelly.
I thank the member for giving way. He stresses the importance of reporting and monitoring. Does he share my concern, therefore, that on page 36 of the report before us today, it outlines the fact that there will no longer be any requirement for reporting at a national level, that monitoring will only take place at a local level, and therefore it undermines the effectiveness of the national government to assess the statistics in relation to antisocial behaviour.
Stewart Stevenson.
I think one of the very clear lessons that emerged from the then Communities Committee's travels around Scotland, to every police area in Scotland the committee members went, was that success in engaging with antisocial behaviour depended on local action. It was an issue that was successful when local action was taken. Let me just, on the subject of reporting, identify for members that, of course, the amendments I brought forward, numbers 95 and 96, introducing section 14A and something after section 20, both specified a reporting period of 3 years. And it was recognised by Margaret Curran in accepting an amendment from me that 3 years was an appropriate period to assess what was going on. Now, of course, there remain differences in this chamber between members and between parties. I have, with some disappointment, heard Mr Butler suggest that an ASBO granted is a measure of success in dealing with antisocial behaviour. Let me take a fundamentally different view. The issuing an ASBO is a measure of failure to deal with antisocial behaviour. And Donald Gorey from the previous Liberal benches, I think, was somebody whom I worked very closely with and had the same view. Mr Butler.
Butler.
Surely an ASBO is simply a measure of a court recognising that an offence has been committed. Wouldn't you agree?
Stewart Stevenson.
That is fundamentally correct. But that it should get to that point where the last and only remedy available is a court intervention, is a measure of the failure that there may have been in the process. So I don't regard 0.1% of complaints leading to ASBOs as necessarily a sign of failure. I take a different view, and I know that other members will do that similarly. It is worth saying, of course, that we've seen a range of interventions with the courts, which I think we regard as helpful. For example, on knife crime, we've seen sentences double in 5 years, from 118 days on average in 2005-06 to 263 days now. So yes, of course, the courts have an important role to play in this area, as they do in the dealing with the criminal, with the antisocial lout. It is important that they clearly address the needs of each individual case. Let me quote from Chief Constable David Strang. Each offender has a personal background. I think it's absolutely proper that the court, having heard all the circumstances of an offence and the offender's circumstance, oppose a sentence that is appropriate. I trust the courts. I don't always agree with the courts, but they have an expertise that I don't necessarily have. Robert Brown said there is no simple solution, and I'm happy to agree with him. Labour's obsession with ASBOs is simply unhelpful. And of course, Labour's proposal, it turns out pointless, simplistic, a waste of time, is something that I'm going to agree with. James Kelly said I could look out of St Andrew's House and see the snow. Well, actually, my office was in Victoria Quay, but let's not quibble about that. But I've been delighted in the last week, as I often do, to receive an email from a constituent very much welcoming the resolution of a local problem in one area of my constituency, absolutely as a result of something that I described in a similar way as stage one of the bill. I said there was a councillor had the initiative and the guts, as councillors and members of Parliament should have, to bring community groups together, hold public meetings, ensure that solutions were obtained. And by the way, I was describing the work in Edinburgh of a Labour councillor and commending it, because everyone in politics has a shared duty to their constituents. Presiding officer, let me close by making an observation about Labour's approach to this debate. There was a glimpse of a proposal from Labour, but we now know that that actually is toothless, is simply going to lead to more bumping of gums. There is never a proposal of substance from Labour, never a suggestion for action, never a way forward, nothing but gurn and gripe. An empty phrase by me, presiding officer. I found a way to measure it. Occurred to me that a word within the Labour motion sounded familiar. I refer to the first word, regrets. No fans of Edith Piaf, je ne regrette rien then, but serial offenders. In fact, there are 16 current motions before Parliament with the word regrets in it as of now. 11 from Labour, 3 from the Greens and 1 each from the SNP and Labour. Regret there is on the Labour benches. Action is entirely absent.